Yeah, but as I said, we spoke about the commercial elements of it, because if you would know there's people like KRS-One and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they had an impact, but they weren't making the money that Nas and the rest were making. And so, was that ever cross your mind? Was it no? And this is my truth that I'm learning, and I need to speak it out. And whether it pays the bills or not, it isn't something that I'm going to be worried about. So, what was? Did you ever think about that in those early days?
I heard you, but you were breaking up a little bit. I'm probably breaking up too. I'm sorry about that if I am.
Okay,
So
no,
yeah,
no.
I mean, I think. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. The good news is, back in the late '80s, early '90s, conscious hip hop really did well. I mean, it was a lot of money being made. You know, Public Enemy sold millions of records per album. You know, KRS-One was touring pretty well, doing quite well. You know, so I think for me, although money wasn't a motivation, you did, at least at that time period in hip hop, have this sense that if you were excellent at what you did, you had a chance to at least get out into the mainstream's consciousness, because Public Enemy was a mainstream group at one point.
Yeah.
You know, and KRS-One was very noted. You know, like back in those days, on the radio, you would play a Public Enemy, a KRS-One, a MC Hammer, a 2 Live Crew, all in the same show. And same difference with touring. You know, tours were mixed like that, where it was MC Hammer, who was straight up popular, and then Public Enemy, who was more underground but still were selling some units, and 2 Live Crew, who was very much controversial but still popular. So, you know, you had a lot of diversity on the mediums that were promoting the music. So that was good, you know. And so, but I wasn't thinking about that too much, though, to be honest. I think I was more so focused on just getting the message out there. And that's the other beauty of that time period. We were way more focused on fundamental changes.
Okay. And so when you started, did you go from Attack, and why did you switch that up to to Arrested Development?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, Attack was my first sort of foray into being into a hip hop group. And at that time, I didn't know myself really. I was about 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
And I was just imitating what I thought was great hip hop. So imitating the styles of, or the vibes of Run DMC and LL and Houdini and UTFO, that type of thing. So, but as when I got to Atlanta in 1987, I was 18 and I wanted to do something different. Plus my consciousness really kicked in. I think hearing Public Enemy's first record, Yo Bum Rush the Show, gave me a real sense of, wow, there's a revolution going on here. It's different. And, you know, KRS-One had an element of that in his music the whole time. But unlike KRS-One, Public Enemy was a little bit more straightforward with it. Like KRS-One sort of mixed the two. He would sort of, you know, like sort of present himself as a gangster slash conscious dude.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, at least. And Public Enemy, on the other hand, was more straightforward, conscious, especially by their second album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. So, yeah, so anyway, so that's, I think I sort of got permission by other groups and artists that were successful doing it. You know, gave me sort of permission to be more wholehearted and steadfast about it.
You mentioned moving to Atlanta, and this was what, by the late 80s?
Yeah, I moved to Atlanta in '87.
So, you know, and I'm saying this because now Atlanta is now a mecca for Black business and music industry and film industry and everything. But, you know, it wasn't until the Face really set up shop there, then Def Jam South. You know, there was nothing really in Atlanta. I remember from Selma moving to Atlanta in '93, '94. You know, houses were cheap. There was nothing much happening until the Olympics in '96. So why Atlanta in '88? Why move to Atlanta at that stage instead of New York or LA?
You know, it's funny, Atlanta, 2 reasons. One is, I told you, 3 reasons. I sucked at school, and the only school I could get into, the only college, was the Art Institute of Atlanta. The second reason is I love the South. Like I fell in love with the South, spending summers with my grandmother in Tennessee.
Okay.
So that was the second reason. The third reason is Black people, even in the early and late 80s in Atlanta, were thriving. Unlike anywhere else in the entire United States. I mean, there was Black middle class all over the place. I mean, everywhere. There was Black businesses thriving. There was Black consciousness and activism thriving. So there was this sense that it was like a little Africa, you know, in Atlanta. And so all of those were reasons. That's why I want to pass this sort of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's true. I mean, I remember. Yeah, they had police chiefs and mayors and Congress people. It was, you know, and probably some of the most beautiful Black people you'd see. And they had Morehouse, Spelman, Clark Atlanta. Actually, I had the opportunity to go to Clark Atlanta or Milwaukee, and I just thought that if I wanted to get a good education, I probably needed to go to the Midwest and focus on education as opposed to stay to Atlanta.
Instead of partying,
Instead of partying. So that's why I moved to Milwaukee. And you know, you're right about the Midwest. I lived in Alabama. I lived in LA. And, you know, to anyone who's watching from Wisconsin, it was a beautiful time, but it was probably the hardest time I experienced as a Black person in my life.
Wow.
It was, I just felt that if in the South, staying in Selma, Alabama, I felt more at home because I knew if people didn't like me, they were very honest. If people liked you, they were honest. You felt like you knew where you stood. And same in LA. But when I moved to Wisconsin, it was like, wow, I can't tell. And so I didn't feel as comfortable living in the Midwest. And as I said, Mequon is great. But yeah, so that's the one thing I always tell people, that the Midwest was probably one of my challenging times living and spending the 10 years in the States.
Totally get that.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, but most importantly, to press the notification bell so that you can be notified when we do have a new interview. Loads to come, but thanks a lot for watching.